Hi, I'm Brendan Jack, a Director and Head of Investments at RMS Advisory, and today we'll be looking at the RMS Crescita portfolio and the 2024 returns on the portfolio. Before reviewing the returns and the risk of the portfolios for 2024, I think it is useful to step back and look at the principles that guide these portfolios and how they were set up initially, and the principles that also apply to how we run the portfolios on a forward-looking basis. Firstly, we look for managers who have lower volatility and risk than the peer group average, but we want the portfolios to deliver similar returns to the peer group average over time. Secondly, we select managers who have got lower correlations and different investment styles. Thirdly, we blend these managers in a way to reduce risk and deliver returns. And lastly, we look for investment simplicity. We do not want a long tail of funds in this portfolio. Must be short and concise as possible. Before looking at the returns for RMS Crescita, I think it's always useful to go and take a step back and look at an overview of what the portfolio is about. And on this basis, simplistically, it is an aggressive portfolio. We are targeting higher capital growth, which does come with higher volatility and risk. So on the risk spectrum, it's around an 8 out of 10. The return objective here over time is inflation plus 5 to 7%. So looking there at the 2024 returns for Crescita, you'll see it delivered a 12.9% return, good year. The return objective of inflation plus 5 to 7%, call it 6%. If you add the 6% to the inflation of 4.4% for 2024, the return objective is 10.4%. So therefore outperforming the return objective. But then looking at the peer group average, there the average was 14.3%. Just to contextualize that though, the Crescita portfolio can invest fully into South Africa or fully offshore. So it's got a very wide mandate. So it's very hard to pick a suitable peer group average to compare that against. So there will be times where Crescita will lag, and that'll be a function of the rand weakening and or offshore markets performing better than local markets. So it is tricky, like I say, to pick a peer group average on that basis. But if you look at the portfolio, all the constituents, all the funds within the portfolio over 2024 delivered positively towards the overall return. So if you look at it, I think it is always useful to look at your returns with the lens of risk. And on that basis, the Crescita portfolio, we've got 2 years worth of risk and return data that we can refer to. So if you look at it over the last 3 years, Crescita's delivered 14.9% per annum, good return. Compare that to the peer group average 16.5%. But again, remember, it's not a like-for-like peer group average, but we have to pick something. If you look at its positive returns over 3 years, 75% of the time the portfolio has been positive versus the peer group average of 79%. But there again, contextualize the peer group average with more global exposure. The rand has depreciated, which has been a tailwind there to push up those positive months for the peer group average. Importantly, maximum drawdown over the last 3 years. Crescita, the most it's fallen over any period over the last 3 years is minus 4.6%. versus the peer group average of minus 5.9%. So there again speaks to the principles of the portfolios we set up right up front, which is to deliver similar returns over time, but with lower risk and volatility. This speaks to that. And importantly, after it's fallen, how long did it take to recover? It took 1 month over the last 3 years, the same as the peer group average. Another way to look at risk and return, I think it's useful to look at these things on a scatter plot basis, just graphically to visualize that. And as you can see on screen, the risk and return is shown here. Vertical axis is the return, annualized return. The horizontal axis is the standard deviation, in other words, the risk. The grey dots, each grey dot represents one peer group fund. The yellow dots in the middle represents the average thereof, and the black dot represents the RMS Crescita portfolio. And what you can see there, it's kept up very close to peers over the last 2 years, annualized return, just under 15%. But importantly, it has delivered this with lower risk, which is what we are are targeting within this portfolio, and as a principle for all the portfolios